So this is my new series, Back to the Basics. I'm going to give y'all everything you need for that perfect base. Now, I always start with color correcting just because I like to get an even base for my foundation. I like to use a detailed brush just to blend out like the edges of the color corrector. And I always set my color corrector with a translucent powder. Now, for me, I like to apply my foundation with just a brush. Get that makeup on. Now, I like to make sure my makeup is packed on, so I don't use a sponge or a beauty blender because it does kind of absorb some of that product. I am bronzer over contour. And I'm also using an oval shaped contour brush. It gets right into the grooves of your cheekbones. It's perfect. Now for my nose, I like to use the Fenty Match Stick because it's actually a bit more neutral and it's not as red as my bronzer that I applied. This is my blush placement. It never fails. And I go ahead and use an angled contour brush. And I also clean up with a bit of the concealer that I'm going to be using underneath my eyes. I use this to kind of sharpen up where I bronze because I don't really contour. Then I blend out my concealer, and I also actually mix a little bit of my blush and concealer on the back of my hand, but you don't see this on camera. But I do that to kind of blend the shades in as a transition. And then I go in with a smaller brush just to really clean up my inner corner. And just you want to blend and blend and blend. Even going back in with your blush brush and concealer brush just to make sure everything is seamless and blended. For powdering, you do want to put a bit in your hand and then also apply that with a puff. That is the best way to get a really seamless blend. I obviously add a lot. I also bring that down to my chin. And then I lastly pull that over to my blush just to go ahead and set that cream blush as well. And this will dilute your blush a little bit, but you'll just go back in with powder blush later. Then I go in and use a powder foundation to actually set my bronzer. This actually has stopped my cream blush and my bronzer from getting too muddy. For my nose contour, I just use a neutral brown eyeshadow. Another trick is I use an eyeshadow to brighten my under eyes and not a powder, and I have no creasing.
Trust me.
I mean, look at the results, y'all.